Hello and welcome to the Talkin Bits Podcast. Nathaniel, take it away because I deserve it.
Yeah. I wasn't even going to address it.
Nope, I'm having some deja vu, guys.
It's got to be addressed. Take it away.
I'm having some deja vu.
You have to cut so much out of that video.
That's all right. It's not a big deal.
Jesus.
No, so, for anybody listening, we were on a roll. I thought we were doing really great.
We were doing great.
Yeah, and now Michael has just destroyed all of our hopes and dreams because he didn't press record. So if you're listening to this, we're 10 minutes into a conversation.
It's on the video at least.
It's on the video.
I think I clicked that, so if there's no video, I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. It's really not a big deal.
That's the first time I've ever done that.
Yeah, it's a first of many, I have a feeling, but that's all right. So
I'm 4 different podcast deep, spanning over 100 episodes. And that's the first time I forgot to click record.
Our superior host today, Mr. Michael Rose.
Nope.
Did not click record.
I didn't.
So here we are. If you're listening to this, little chaotic of a start. We are here with Bryan Morton.
Yes, the
We're
very
very
funny
excited.
Bryan Morton.
Happy to be here.
Despite Michael's blunder, we're very excited to have Bryan here. To avoid going over the intro and everything before before Michael hit record, we were talking about an important topic, I think, which is you doing comedy in Bristol prior to there being anything. So one thing I forgot to mention too before Michael didn't press record is I grew up in Bristol.
He's feeling pretty good over there. I can see
That's
that.
good. Good. Let him sit in it.
I'm sinking.
He deserves it. The amount of shit I've gotten on this show.
That's me.
That's for him.
That's not me. That was.
That's good.
I don't know where
That's
it's
enough.
at. It doesn't matter.
It's getting worse.
Yeah.
It's getting worse. So I grew up in Bristol, and I don't recall any mention of a local stand-up scene. I mean, I don't recall. You were saying before Michael didn't hit record.
Fucked up. Yeah.
You were saying that there were some open mics. There was some stuff you were doing in town, but I don't recall it at all. I mean, what kind of following did that have at that time?
So it didn't have much of a following,
Okay.
to be honest with you. So there's a couple of dudes. Hunter was one of them.
Okay, Hunter Roberts. Yeah.
And Brad White, I think he doesn't live here anymore. I think he lives in Seattle or somewhere. But a couple of guys got together, and they called it, I can't remember what they called it. I'm trying to think of the name of it. It's like Beat About Comedy is what they called it.
Okay.
And they had a place that they did an open mic like once a week.
Yeah.
And maybe 5 or 6 people would come to try to do comedy. And, I mean, it was cool. I was one of those things, man. I was one of these guys that, like, I saw Jerry Seinfeld when I was 21 years old at Caesar's Palace, and I laughed so hard I couldn't stand it.
Oh, wow.
That's so cool.
And it kind of planted the seeds, like, I would love to just try that sometime.
Yeah.
You know, you got friends that are always like, hey, man, you should tell jokes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah.
So I rolled into an open mic when I saw that they were having them, and I did it, and it went badly. I mean, not as bad as, in hindsight, better than I thought it would go.
Yeah.
I got enough out of it. It's like, okay.
You got a couple laughs.
I think I could work on that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, so there wasn't much of a following though, because really the only people that were coming were whoever was doing open mic and anybody that was a friend of theirs.
Right.
And it didn't last terribly long. I mean, they did it for a while, and there was some stuff going on in Johnson City. And admittedly, I wasn't as tied into it as some others, just because, at the time, I got kids in high school, and I'm busy, and I'm job, I'm on the road. So there's probably more going on than what I thought, but
sure,
I wasn't as involved. But I did love to go whenever I had a chance.
Yeah, it's tough to sustain too. I mean, I think now we're kind of spoiled, that we have Blue Ridge and stuff. Like Michael and I have come up with a club, whereas we've even seen recently there was one of our local open mics that I'm pretty sure is done, at least for now, has closed down and is no more. So that it's tough. Yeah, I think
Johnson City.
I think Rum Bar's done. Yeah.
Oh man, I was going to work out some stuff Tuesday night. So
I
guess we'll do it Wednesday night.
I could be speaking out of turn. I believe that the business itself is going through some changes, so there's kind of a pause on the mic for now.
Huh.
Oh wow.
Is my understanding. But yeah, so I mean, it's tough to sustain because at the end of the day, you're operating a bar.
Right.
You're not operating a club. So the comedy's not bringing in any money. It's sometimes drinks, or food for the comics and
sometimes
and the
makes
audience.
people walk.
Sometimes it clears your clientele. Also,
and they pay me so much when I come there, so I'm like, I don't know where they're making money. You know what I mean? Like,
how are they staying afloat?
Bryan gets 80% of all drink sales.
I've been wondering where all their money is going.
Yeah.
It's a tough business. I mean, I think even as a club owner, we had Sean on the show as well, and he went into kind of more the production and the booking side of things. But being a club owner is such a stressor too. I can't imagine. Do you have any ambition to run your own shows, mics, showcase, any of that? Or are you just like,
not really.
Yeah.
I mean, I've done shows before just, for fun, or if I had to. If I wanted to do anything local before there's a club. I mean, I did a couple shows. I put on a couple shows just because I wanted a platform to perform on.
Of course, yeah.
And I have to tell you about one because it blew me away. It was
All right. Yeah.
So, but no, I don't have any real aspirations one way or the other. But I got to tell you about this one though, because
please
you probably know people involved.
Okay. All right.
This has been a couple years ago, and Bristol Station Brewery was open.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And he's a friend of mine. He's like, man, I'd love for you to do a comedy show. And I was like, okay, cool. So I'll try to book some people. And I had met Ryan Cox at the open mic. Do you know Ryan?
I do know
He's
Ryan.
a Nashville comedian.
I've met Ryan.
Funny guy.
Yeah, I love Ryan.
Yeah, he's a good dude. And so I asked him to come, as well as some other people locally that had been on the thing. Then I had somebody drop out. And so I booked this thing. The guy wanted to book it. He put me as the closer kind of thing.
Sure.
And this was before there was any clubs. So I'm still finding my way to some, somewhat. So I have somebody cancel, and Ryan was like, hey, if you've got anybody cancels, I got somebody that I could bring over that I think would be good.
Okay.
And I was like, cool. And he's like, but definitely put him on after me. I was like, okay. And I was like, so I'll put him on after you and then like before me.
Yeah.
So we bring Cody Hughes.
Oh, God. I was hoping you'd say that.
He murders.
So
And I'm like, oh, shit, I got to go up now.
He's so funny.
He was so good.
Yeah.
And he did so much crowd work just on he had looked up the Bristol Station Brewery and that it was a bus station. And
He did his research.
He murdered, and I was like, oh, shit. Now I got to go up. You
Yeah.
know? And I'm like,
Yeah.
I mean, it was fine, but I was like, this guy is the real deal.
Tough
You know what
follow.
I mean?
Yeah.
It was tough following him because he'd been doing it a lot for a long time.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, he's very
He's very funny.
he's very unique.
Yeah, he
also he's got this this style of comedy. It's I hesitate to say an awkwardness, but it's definitely an awkwardness.
Oh,
I think
for
he
sure.
would tell you that. But it reads in such a funny way. I think some of my favorite comics, that's that awkwardness. I love, like, you work a lot with Paul Snyder,
Oh, yeah,
who I
yeah.
also adore, and it's a very similar kind of like,
Yeah.
quirky, unnerving
Right.
style.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
love that in a
Yeah.
comedian. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and Cody is he grinds. I mean, he's always doing shows and stuff. I'm
He
sure.
an Nashville comic?
Yeah. Cody's
so
hilarious.
good. So good.
Cody has, if you're listening to this and you don't know Cody, please try to check him out if you're in Asheville, or he comes to Blue Ridge a lot too.
He's got a YouTube special.
He's
too.
got a YouTube special. It's
that's super cool.
Hello Fellow Human. Is
Yeah,
that it?
that's it, yeah.
Hello Fellow Human. Yeah, and it's hilarious. I listened to the whole thing. He has a bit about doubting Thomas from the Bible. I don't know if anybody listening knows Cody Hughes' Doubting Thomas, but it's one of my favorite jokes
No,
of
it's
all
so
time.
good.
It's so funny.
Yeah.
He's hilarious. So he comes over, and then and you have to follow
And
that.
I got to follow him.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
and I'm like, and I'm thinking, I mean, locally, I'm like, I'm okay. Locally,
Yeah.
I'm
Sure,
fine. I'm
sure.
holding my own.
Yeah.
He comes over, and that bar is like, whoop.
Yeah.
It's up here. I was
Yeah.
like, holy shit, I got to do this now?
Yeah.
Shout out to Ryan too. That's a bold move to be
Oh.
like, I'm bringing somebody.
No, I mean, he's. I mean, I had somebody drop out. He's like, man, I got somebody to fill in.
Yeah.
And then, but he was very clear to say, put him after me.
Of
I was
course.
like,
Yeah.
okay.
Now you know why. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
I was
just
like,
did
I
a
should have
show.
put him after me, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
dude, that's crazy.
Yeah, I just did a little show with Ryan in Knoxville. He's still same thing. Those Asheville comedians, they work hard. They're always
Yeah, they got a
traveling.
lot of opportunities over here. They got a
Yes.
weird amount of opportunities in Asheville,
They
I
do.
feel like,
Yeah.
for the size of the city. But
And they're great. They're all
Yeah.
really talented.
Sure.
I still have yet to tell a joke in Asheville, North Carolina.
Yeah, and they appreciate that.
I had,
Yep,
I
I
had
do
one of my
appreciate
worst
that.
open mics in Asheville.
Is that right?
Oh, my
A lot
God.
of people say that. Me too, actually. Yeah.
Well, mine, though, was
Was it the Pulp? Mine was at the Pulp.
it was at this. It was the Disclaimer open mic, but it used to be at a place called, and this is years ago. It used to be at a place called. It's not where it is now. And I can't. Remember
okay.
I can't remember what the place was called.
Is that the one that's at the Odd now? There's one at the Odd.
No, it's not at the Odd. I can't remember where the Disclaimer is, but it was definitely at a different location.
Gotcha.
And being Asheville, it's a beer place,
Yeah.
right?
Sure.
And Apparently, I was 12 beers down the list.
Yeah.
Was what it turned out to be. And I barely made it to the stage.
Got it.
But I got there long enough to get the red light pretty quickly. You know, it's
That's
like,
cool.
it did not go well.
That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah, so.
Yeah. That's tough. It's a tough city. I think kind of what we were talking about too. There's so many killers walking around, and it's just such a tight knit scene that I think a lot of times as an outsider, I don't know if it's in my head as much. You know, it's kind of like, oh, they don't want me there, or they don't like me. I think it's half
in your
true
head.
and half in my head.
It's
I
a
think
different
it's
vibe,
both.
though, over there, too. Because it's very, I mean, it's very Asheville. I mean, it's
very
I
Asheville.
mean, how do you describe it other than that? It's so Asheville over there.
Yeah, if you look at that
it's
versus
misplaced.
Bristol,
It's a misplaced city in North Carolina.
Yes,
it's
it
different.
is.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. There's there's a certain kind of character that that comes out of there. It's real. It's an interesting place. I think, is that one of the weirder places you've done comedy?
I mean, that was one of the worst places I've done comedy. It's not. I mean, I've done weirder places.
Yeah.
I did a show. You would appreciate this, Michael. They asked me to do the like Tri-Cities Association of Realtors banquet or something.
Oh no!
No, they asked me to MC it. No shit.
Oh, okay.
They did. Right. So, and it's at the Sessions Hotel or whatever last year.
Classy venue.
Yeah. So I asked the girl. I was like, "So how much time do you want me to do?" She's like, "Well, I don't want you to do any time. I just want you to make it fun." And I'm like, "Okay."
What?
So you asked me to do this.
Yeah.
And you don't want me to do anything that it is that gave you the reason to ask me to do this.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You know?
Right. Don't be
She's
yourself.
Like, she's like, no, just make it fun. And I was like, it was not very much fun.
What does
guys.
that mean? Yeah.
I mean, I tried to, I didn't do any material, but I tried to make it light. I figured out a couple of jokes. It worked all right, but I was like,
Yeah.
get somebody else next time.
That's a different thing.
As a realtor, I'm not going to talk shit about realtors, but I know the people. You know what I mean?
And they're not funny. Yeah.
It's tough,
They're
dude.
not funny. Yeah.
I don't do my jokes to people I work with.
That's good. Honestly, that makes me proud of you.
Yeah.
I would hate you for that if you were like,
Yeah.
I tell everybody I work with all my material.
Yeah.
That would make me resent you so bad.
No, I post them. When I post them, they're like, "Oh, that was super funny. You should tell us jokes." And I'm like, "I'm not
No.
going to tell you."
Absolutely.
I was on a Zoom call, and I was one of 4 people who were virtual, and the other 70 people were in person. And I was on screen just talking about myself for a second, and someone was like, "You're a stand-up." I was like, "Yeah, I am." And they're like, "Well, you have the stage. Do some time." And I'm like,
That literally makes me crawl out of my skin. Just
It's the
thinking
worst.
I was
the
like, I
worst.
can't do that. Like,
That's me every day at work too.
Yeah,
it's terrible.
it's tough.
They
So,
always like, it's like, and I've started just being like, "Hey, what's your Venmo?"
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, if you, hey, tell me a joke. Okay, what's your Venmo?
Yeah. Right.
All right. So
Yeah.
I try to think of something to say.
$5 a punchline.
Yeah. It's like, hey, we
$5 a
can
minute.
do
I'll do
this.
$5
We
a
can do
minute.
this, but
Yeah.
you're going to pay for it.
That's tough. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
that's a good move though. That probably shuts them down. I don't Brian, speaking of kind of like that sessions gig and stuff, you do a lot of corporate gigs or like bigger, things like that real estate group. And I think that's pretty unique for this show. A lot of the comics we've had on here are just like club comics like ourselves or bar open mics. We did have Johnny on, and we asked him about, you all did a country club together one time.
Oh, yeah.
And he talked about that a little bit, and I think that's a super cool venue. But do you enjoy that side of things? It's very different than club comedy.
I like it a lot for the right shows. So, like, I started kind of, I work with an agency where I do a lot of clean now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can get booked.
Sure.
You
Oh,
know?
yeah.
So I'm working with an agency now that will put me places.
Gotcha.
And they're always pretty good shows. I mean, they're always like, I just did this, last, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, I did this resort in West Virginia. Complete sellout, probably 400 people there.
Really?
Jeez.
And it was awesome.
That's
it was
awesome.
It was so much fun.
And that's a clean show also?
Cleanish. It was, it's PG-13. The great thing is, too, is that these guys will book you at places because they know you're not going to get just terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
But like I've got one they've got me headlining for in Williamsburg, Virginia in a couple weeks.
Oh, shit.
And they're like, "Hey, we want you to do 55 minutes." And I was like, this better not be a clean show or you won't get 55 minutes.
Yeah.
You know, I could give you 55.
Yeah, right.
But we got to throw in some dirties.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Sure.
and they're like, "Oh, no, this is a brewery, so you're fine." I was like,
Oh,
all right,
score.
let's go.
You're going to have a blast.
Yeah,
Oh,
that'll
yeah.
be a good time.
How many times have you headlined like that long?
Done
Done that many minutes?
I've done, 55. I don't know that I've ever done 55.
Yeah.
That was the number they pulled out. I've done 45 at a couple headline shows, probably half a dozen.
Yeah.
So, but this one's going to be kind of long. It's funny because one of the people that I performed with at this resort, she was booked as a feature on this same show that I'm doing a headline on. And she told me, she's like, hey, when I was booked as a feature on this show, headliner didn't show up. She's like, I had to do both.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
I was like,
that's terrible.
That's awful.
That's crazy.
That's a nightmare.
Going from feature to headlining
and featuring.
She had to fill all this. She had to do
what
all
is
the
it,
time.
like 90 minutes?
She got
total?
booked to do 20 minutes, ended up having to do an hour and a half.
Yeah, that's insane.
She's a funny lady, and I guess she's got it.
I hope so.
Yeah, she was.
Kudos.
She's
to
a
her.
New
Could you
York
imagine-
comedian. She's pretty good.
Could you imagine you getting booked for
No.
a feature spot, and they're
Absolutely
like, hey,
not.
by the way,
No.
headline it out.
My answer would be
God.
no. No. Like, this show ends after me. We're done. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, I'll
That's
give you a
crazy.
great 20.
That's
but
crazy.
After,
How do you, Brian, how do you think that crowds compare? Because I mean, obviously, size. You're saying like 400 is a ton. That's a massive crowd for us. Sure. But that's a different. Is there a different vibe in the audience versus like a club crowd?
Sometimes there is. What I've noticed is that people that go to some of these like resort shows, country club shows, or whatever.
Yeah.
They're not every day. I'm going to the club to see a comedy people kind
right.
of thing.
Right.
And they're usually, a little bit older, probably closer to my demographic.
Sure.
So,
yeah.
and again, not always doing comedy. So it's a special event for them to go to the show. So they're ready to laugh. They're my demographic, and it always just works out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
that's good.
Those are good shows. I love comedy club shows too, though.
I do
as
too.
long as it's, as long as there's, plenty of people.
Sure.
Yeah.
Last night was a hot show.
Yeah.
No, last night was
Last
a good
night
show.
was great.
Yeah, it was
So-
good.
Yeah, I was going to ask you all about that. How did that?
Yeah, it went.
There were more people.
Were there?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
and
You
I
did
don't-
it on Friday, right?
I did, yeah. So for everybody listening, we had Sean's out of town at Blue Ridge, so he kind of left Brian to run the ship, and so Brian very generously had me on Friday and you on last night, Michael, with the headliner who was hilarious, very funny. And yeah, Friday I thought it was a good crowd.
It was a good crowd. So there was a good laughing crowd. It wasn't a big crowd. There was just more people last night, but it was a good crowd.
Yeah, I thought so. I kind of get nervous with small crowds sometimes, but I feel more comfortable. I don't know. I was very comfortable on that show.
How'd she do on your with the smaller crowd?
Headliner?
Yeah,
Great.
She did well. She did very well.
Great. Yeah.
I'm forgetting her first name.
Jasmine
Ellis.
Yeah, sorry, I was forgetting her first name. She
fair.
killed on our show. I mean, it was, I'd say, 40, 50 people?
Yeah,
maybe.
yeah.
That's awesome.
Yesterday.
Were there
And
kids in your crowd?
there were no were there kids in your crowd?
Yeah, there's a couple kids.
There was one. Yeah, for sure.
Like
There's two kids with their parents that came.
Like teenager or like younger?
Eighth grade and
Eighth
sophomore.
grader.
Because I asked. 8th grade and sophomore.
Well,
Which I
eighth
have
grade is like
substitute
14.
material, so I just kind of went into that.
8th grade's like 14, sophomore's like what, 15,
It was
16, you know?
It was a small enough crowd where I started a joke and I was like, well, anybody been divorced? And like crickets.
Nobody.
And I
Yeah.
was like, oh, everybody's happily married or 12.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
No.
Brian was the only one that addressed it. We had Katie Steigers on the show also, and I love Katie, but she didn't, I don't know if she didn't realize they were kids or she didn't point it out. So I just felt the urge to point, so like halfway through my set, I didn't acknowledge it. And then just halfway through, there was a lull, and I just go, yeah, there's kids here. And people lost it. Like everybody was looking around, like pointing at the kids. And I was like, I know you're here. I know you're here. You
Those
just heard me
kids-
talk about masturbation for 5 minutes. I know you're sitting there.
Dude, those kids are never going to a comedy show.
Oh, I told her. I
Oh,
was
they
like,
had a lot of fun though. I mean, Jasmine
did.
ripped the Band-Aid off. She
Yeah.
didn't care.
No.
And they were laughing a
Yeah.
lot.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's got to
Yeah.
be a cool parent. I mean, I'd like to think that I'd take my daughter. Shout out to Baby OJ and CrossFit. I think I'd like to think that I'd take my daughter to comedy
Yeah.
shows.
Yeah, they had a good time. It was fun to see like when Jasmine, because I was told to be sort of cleanish, you know, like there's kids here and stuff. So I tried at least a
I
little
did
bit to
too,
clean it
yeah.
up. And then Jasmine comes out and is not clean at all. But I was fine with it. I just thought it was funny that whenever she delivered something that wasn't particularly clean, it was cool. Brian and I were sitting in the back, and I saw the heads of the kids turn and look at their parents every time. Like, can we laugh? Is this okay?
That's
and then they
funny.
would lose it as soon as they got like the thumbs up from the parents.
Dude, I thought last night was great. So Brian asked me yesterday to be on the show. So I was just like, I was not prepared honestly,
sometimes that's better.
I just kind of went in. I'm be honest. It went well, so I'll say it now. I kind of winged it a little bit, and I did go over on time. Sorry about that.
But sometimes it's better.
But yeah, it was a good show. I tried some of the new jokes I've been working on, and they went very well. So
I'm not. Where is she from? Do you know Jasmine?
L.A. She's originally from Texas, but she lives in L.A. now.
Yeah, did you not listen to her set because she has a whole joke about that?
I remember her saying L.A., but I didn't know if that's where she grew up or whatever.
I thought that was interesting because when she did that show that night, she was like, "Yeah, I live in L.A., but I'm from Texas," and then she's like. She made the comment that not everybody loves it. She's from Texas. Like, listen, we're fine with Texas, but fuck LA. You know,
it's not Texas.
I was like,
you have no idea.
I mean, you know where you're at. We're good with Texas.
We're good. Yeah. We stand with y'all. Yeah.
She was very funny.
Very funny. Yeah.
She had a couple punchlines that just got me. And I was sitting next to her friend the whole time, and her friend. I want to say real quick,
very supportive.
I don't know how many times her friend has heard her do her set, but that is a good friend.
Yeah.
Because she was laughing.
Oh, she laughed.
She laughed harder than anybody in the audience to every punchline.
Hey, you know what? Her friend is pretty funny in her own right. Just I had brunch with them that day. And we had the best time.
Really?
Oh,
God,
we had so much fun. Yeah,
that's great.
She her friend was really cool too.
That's the most supportive.
It's always cool to see headline. I mean, we've talked about it a billion times on the show, but headliners that not only are just nice and like welcoming to the other local comics, the crowd and everything, but they go above and beyond. Like they have brunch with you and stuff. There's certain headliners that are just like, I'm going to stay at the hotel or the Airbnb. Don't talk to me. I'm just going to drag my suitcase in, do the show, and leave. Yeah. And it's cool to see the ones like Blake Wexler sticks out for me always.
Yeah, Blake's great.
Just one of the nicest dudes ever. Yeah.
That's Ryan Flanagan was the first one I ever hosted for, and like super cool.
Super nice.
Yeah. We hung out for a little bit after he went out. I couldn't go out drinking with him, but he went out drinking with Pruitt and Lance Adams was also on that show.
That's so much fun.
Super cool. So,
do you have any headliners, Bryan, that stick out to you? Maybe not for the same reasons, but just as far as like it was so crazy to work with this person. I mean, I've seen you've got a lot of connections locally too, and a lot of people that you're friends with.
Like headliners that I love working with Joe Zimmerman.
Yeah.
I mean, that guy.
That's who I figured. Yeah.
I love working with him because he's a cool guy.
He's super cool.
He's very accomplished, does very good. And he's actually been really cool to kind of help me out a lot. So that's awesome. He's the one kind of got me hooked up with the agency that I work with that books me at places or whatever. Yeah. And, when he comes down here, he has me on shows, and I went to his. He did the Nate Bargatze New Year's Eve show in Fort Lauderdale.
Oh, that's super cool.
It was very cool.
Yeah.
And I went down, hung out, and Joe got me tickets backstage and all that stuff or whatever.
That's awesome.
And he wanted to introduce me to Greg Warren. Because I don't know if you know Greg Warren.
I know who that is. The Salesman. He just released the Salesman special.
Super funny guy. Greg was on that show too, but Greg tours a lot in the South, and he's like, I want to get you up with Greg because he tours more in the South than I do. Yeah. And so I got to meet Greg, and so hopefully I'll do some stuff with him maybe. That's exciting. But it was a good time.
Yeah.
Do you not know who Greg Warren is?
I don't.
Hilarious.
Hilarious.
He's very He just released a special, like Nate Bargatze's company, Nateland Production, whatever it's called, just produced a special for Greg Warren.
Gotcha.
Called The Salesman, and it is hilarious.
I'll have to check that out. Yeah. They also did Joe's, right?
They did. Yeah, he did Joe's too.
Yeah. I was wondering why, I guess Joe Zimmerman, I was like, I know who that is, but I can't think of why I know him.
Actually, that's what I was going to ask you about, Bryan. So a while back, Joe was coming, I guess he's going to Asheville to record that special with Nate. And he came by Blue Ridge. I think it was a Thursday show, and there was kids there too. For some reason, there's always kids at my show.
Clean Comic, Nate's producing it.
Clean Comic, yeah. So he goes on, and Bryan invites me down, and I got to hang out with them and stuff. And it's very cool. He's very nice. And then he goes on, and you had very, very generously offered me free tickets to come. That you're like, I have some extra tickets if you want to go. I couldn't go for some reason, and so I'm like already pissed that I can't go to this recording. And then Bryan sends me a picture of him standing backstage, and Nate Bargatze's like 2 feet from you, looking in the monitors, and I was like, "Son of a bitch."
Yeah. What's
I'll tell you a funny story about that too, because so I was hosting Joe's show, and
that show.
Oh yeah, the taping. Yeah, I hosted that. So I'm actually in the credits
in Asheville,
albeit Bryan with an I, and I'm like, what the fuck, Joe? That's not even my name, bro.
Yeah. But you're in there.
No, I'm on there. It's like Bryan with an I Morton. I was like, funny. Oh shit. Okay. But anyway, so Nate was really cool because he was like, listen, I was hosting another friend of Joe's, Carrie. Carrie's last name slipped me. Great guy, Asheville comic.
Okay.
was on too, and Nate for the late show. I mean, I did the early. They did 2 shows that they took bits from. For the late show, Nate was like, "Hey man, I just want you guys to be able to do your show." So he's like, "I'm going to go out and just kind of kick things off."
Oh wow!
So he actually brought me on the second show, but what was funny because I had a joke about it because I'd met him, but we hadn't hung out a lot yet. We hung out some after the show.
Yeah.
But I tell people, I was like, "Hey, listen, Nate Bargassi brought me on for the show." And I was like, I will never forget what he said to me, right before he brought me on. He's like, he looked me straight dead in the eye and he was like, "What was your name?" For real. And but that's true.
That's hilarious.
That is absolutely true.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, but no, he knows my name now, but he was a great dude. Very, very, very cool. So it was a great experience.
That's always good too. Because that's the fear is like you meet this guy, not only a famous comedian, but a famous comedian who's kind of known for being a nice guy.
Oh yeah.
And then you meet him and he's such a prick, that'd be devastating.
He's a super guy.
That's awesome.
He's everything you might think he would be. He's a really nice guy.
We talked about that, I think, on the Tyler Glunt episode too, but Theo Vaughn, I met him a couple times. Same thing, like just really the man, like walks the walk. And that's cool.
Nate Bargassi is like he may be, I might say he is my favorite, like current, like active.
He's great.
He's fantastic.
Comedian right now. Like,
I think too, comedians in general, particularly if they've done a lot, they have respect for somebody who's going to get up there and do it. Yeah. You know what I mean? So I think there's just this kind of that they just if you're out there doing it and you're working at it or whatever. Yeah.
Well, he did those terrible mics that we were talking about at the beginning of the show. For years.
Oh, 100%.
So he understands.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know, man. He spent a lot of time in New York just grinding.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's tough.
He's
tough to get up.
He's hilarious.
That's like I'd say for anybody. This is way too early in the episode advice, but I mean, the toughest part of it is to get in front of the mic.
Yeah, just
get behind the mic.
Keep doing it.
Yeah.
Well, getting back up. I mean, like if things don't go, if I've been, and I'm like, I think everybody kind of goes through this at times. Like, if I have a bad show, I'm like, what am I doing? Why am I even doing this?
Yeah, for sure.
If I have a good show, I'm like, oh, I want to do every show forever. You know. So it's a roller coaster of emotions.
It really is.
You gotta make yourself get back at it.
There was a guy at this last week's open mic, and I don't know his name and everything, but I don't know if you guys know what I'm talking about. He got up, said like 3 lines of his setup, and then was like, I don't want to do this, and got off the stage.
Yeah,
I wasn't there for that. So
that was the first time I've ever seen somebody cave like that. But there was part of me, like the comic in me, that went, I get it, bro.
I get it. I want to see if he comes back. I want to see if he comes back.
I don't know, man.
His buddy got up, did his whole set.
Yeah.
And then his buddy is his first time. His buddy went first. It's his first time ever doing an open mic.
Yeah.
And then this guy went I think he went right after me, and I went like 4th or 5th, and the other guy went first. And this guy did it and just did not go for it. Now, I'd be curious to see if they come back, honestly.
It's nerve-wracking.
I mean, I get it because I've done an open mic where I just got one new joke on a workout.
Yeah.
And it goes terribly. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm done.
Always,
and I know there's people there that's never seen me before, and they're like, that guy sucks.
Yeah. I've done that too, especially like if I have friends that I know are coming to a show or something, I have a bad show. I'm like, I swear to God, sometimes I'm good at this. Like, not this time, but occasionally I can do this. Yeah. You mentioned Seinfeld early on in the episode. I can't remember if
I don't know if that was actually what we're recording or not, but yeah.
I don't think so.
You did at some point say Seinfeld.
You did mention Seinfeld, Brian. Was he, so growing up before you're ever doing comedy, like as a kid, maybe in your household, is there stand-up around growing up?
Yeah, I mean, there was. It's funny when I think about when I was younger, stand-up. I was a lot of Eddie Murphy, a lot of Richard Pryor.
Yeah, the best.
Those were all good. I got, I was a big Seinfeld fan of the show too.
Yeah,
gotcha.
It's a great show.
Oh, it's the best show ever.
Yeah,
kind of,
great.
I think. But I remember when early on after I can't remember if I was married or I was dating. I can't remember, but I was 20 something and we were in Las Vegas, and I saw, because I love the show. I was like, he's at Caesar's Palace. I was like, I don't care, I'm going.
You're going, yeah.
I hurt when I left. I mean, I hurt from laughing. I hurt so much.
That's the best feeling.
Yeah.
And I was like, how cool would it be? I mean, that's like planted to see. Now, I didn't start doing anything until way after.
Right.
But I was like, how awesome is that to just get up there and just make people laugh?
Yeah.
Do you remember the openers or anything from that show? Or
honestly, I do not. I don't remember anything else other than him.
Yeah.
That
and of
probably
course,
speaks to how good it was.
Exactly.
yeah. It was so fun.
Ironically, I just saw last night, I think he's in Atlanta. Some of the, like Sean, I don't know if Sean went, but some of the people Sean's at the West End Comedy Festival right now in Atlanta. Some of the people he's with, I saw posted on their story that they just saw Seinfeld last night in Atlanta, and they said some of the best writing, some of the best hour they've ever seen. So that's...
Yeah, Paul Snyder posted something about it because I knew he was going to the show.
That's who it was.
He was like, he's like, this is bucket list.
Yeah.
And I said, bro, I saw him way back when, and that just was
and he's
that
still
was the
crushing.
seed. Yeah,
He's still crushing.
But you know
He
what?
does the same set, though. He's been doing for years, doesn't he? He doesn't, right?
He drops the bottom 10% each
Yeah.
year.
Okay.
I will say this.
So after a decade, it's brand new.
And of course, Seinfeld, he's great.
He's great.
Right. So I'll preface it with he's great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
But you got to have a little bit of trauma or something. You got to have a little edge.
Little edge.
He's worth $1 billion, man. He's not as
Yeah.
funny as he was.
Yeah.
But he's still funny.
Yeah.
Still funny. Don't get me wrong. But I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't relate to,
Mm-hmm.
How about these, private plane bathrooms?
Right.
I don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
relate to that
Yeah.
anymore. But
I know what you're saying.
He used
It's
to have
like out
airline
of touch.
peanuts joke. Now it's like,
No.
boy, the foie gras on that flight was
right, yeah.
not as
Yeah.
funny.
Yeah, he's got $1 zillion. He's fine.
It kind of
You know?
reminds me, I
Out
think
of
it's
touch a little bit
yeah,
at this
it's
point.
comparable
Yeah.
to like a fighter, in sports too, or musicians. Like when fighters are young and hungry, there's and then like Conor McGregor now is like doing yoga on his yacht before a fight, and you're like, it's not the same thing. It's not the same. And musicians the same way. Like once a band gets a certain level, they kind of their albums start lacking that edge.
Well,
They're
that's
not
the thing.
chain smoking. They're not chain smoking by the dumpster behind the
Yeah.
venue. They're
Yeah, it's different.
Yeah, the bigger the comedians get, kind of the less quality it seems like.
Sometimes,
longer times.
Yeah.
I mean, over time. But
yeah.
I think for me, Seinfeld's most impressive thing is just that longevity that, you saw
100%.
him 20 plus years ago. Paul saw him last night and he crushed both times.
Still crushes.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
that's fantastic.
Yeah. Cause how many great comics do you know? I mean, I think for me, Kinnison's probably the best example of like at the height, maybe the best ever, but so short lived,
Yeah.
just an immediate drop off. And that's the business. It's hard. It's
Yeah.
hard when you reach that level, but Seinfeld, for whatever reason, he's managed that.
He has.
Yeah.
Some people are just like timeless. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
Norm Macdonald's probably maybe my favorite.
Is he?
God almighty, he's that guy.
So growing up, is he one too that like
yeah.
you're introduced
Norm
to him?
Macdonald was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just telling somebody this the other. Justin Mays and I were talking about Norm. I don't know if you know this, Brian, but I heard another comedian on a podcast one time say that when Norm was coming up in, I guess, Denver, and he was like really grinding and started headlining shows, that when he would have a killer set and he just crushed the room, he'd go hide in the green room afterwards, wouldn't talk to anybody. But if he bombed, they said he would bomb, like he would walk half the room. If he bombed for an hour, he would go stand by the exit and shake hands with every person as they
Oh
were
my
leaving
God.
the show. Which may be the
That's
funniest
interesting. That is crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
thing. May be the funniest thing I've ever heard about.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
just a sense of humor, man.
If you're a comic and you hear that, you know how messed up that's insane. Because
God.
most of us want to die when we
Oh no,
bomb.
I want to hide. If
Yeah.
if it's bad, I'm gone. I'm out.
No,
Yeah.
he would
I don't
shake
wanna
hands
talk
and
to
thank them for coming to
anybody.
the show.
I don't want to talk to my friends. I don't want to
Yeah.
talk to my wife. I just want to leave.
It's
you
bad.
know?
It's bad. Yeah.
Jeez.
So I mean, Norm, that's probably SNL at the time too. Was it just stand up in your house, or we've had a lot of guests on this show, and we've had a real wide array of answers for like early influences. I mean,
Yeah.
Joey Gray even mentioned, he always sticks out to me. He mentioned Three Stooges was big in his
Oh,
house.
wow.
Like
Okay.
as far as comedy goes, I mean, I think Saturday morning cartoons is one we've gotten before. Do you remember that thing that made maybe your family laugh, and you were like, "Whoa, they're laughing at this."
Yeah. So I mean, I was in the early days. I was a big Saturday Night Live fan.
Yeah,
I loved In Living Color too.
me too.
Oh my God,
So much.
And then Jamie Foxx, I thought was
Yeah.
hilarious.
The best.
Some of those shows I really liked.
So like sketch comedy.
Sketch
yeah.
comedy was great. You know, because I didn't listen to a lot of stand up other than, again, Eddie Murphy Raw and a couple of his.
Delirious, yeah.
Yeah, Delirious.
Yeah.
And then a couple of Richard Pryor things.
Yeah.
It was funny. I do remember as a young kid, and what is this guy's name? It was so stupid. He used to have some of those, it was like country things. I can't even remember. I wish I could remember what it's called. But he had an album. Man, I do not remember it.
Like a blue collar type thing, but before them, obviously.
It was
but
definitely
like
before
Southern-
that, but it was like, by the end of this thing, I might remember the name. But it was always funny too, because he had little songs and he had like it is funny.
There's one Jerry.
You talking about Jerry Clower?
Jerry Clower. Yeah,
that's not who I'm talking about. Ray Stevens, maybe. Maybe it's Ray Stevens. I think.
I don't know Ray Stevens, but I would imagine that's probably.
Yeah, he had some interesting stuff. It was
yeah.
But and so I do like some of, and I actually. And of course I was older then, but I loved Ron White, kind of the blue comedy stuff, blue collar stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was, and I don't even know if Ray Stevens was a comedian, but he had some albums that had funny songs and some funny things on it.
That's also before, I mean, for anybody listening, I think we have some comedian friends who listen to the show and stuff that are younger, and a lot of times, just because the way I grew up, like Michael, even a lot of my references or my early inspirations, Michael has no idea what the hell I'm talking about. Like, because I grew up with my grandpa and my dad, it's like most of my influences are older. Is that Ray Stevens?
That's Ray Stevens.
Yeah.
Is that the guy? Yeah,
I think so.
He's 85 years old. Just so you know.
That's, okay, so that's how old I am, guys. Yeah. Okay, just saying.
Yeah.
You know I'm the old guy.
I think at that time though, there's no streaming. There's not a special being put out every week.
No, there was
streaming and stuff.
Bro,
so
there wasn't
a different.
There
thing.
wasn't technology then.
Right.
There was. There was nothing.
There's albums. Yeah, you could buy.
There was 3 channels on TV.
Yeah. I've not really
I've
not really dove into it too much, but he has. You know how like shows like songs they release.
Yeah.
This one song he has
tracks.
released in 1962.
Oh, he's way back.
Jesus.
When
I thought early influence, I mean, I wasn't even born then, so I wasn't that old. But
yeah.
Well, yeah, but it's just
I do remember when I was a kid.
Yeah.
He's got some like MAGA looking merch. It's not that.
It's pretty
but
cool.
It kind of like looks like it.
It doesn't
like, look
shock
at that
me.
hat.
He probably is, dude.
Look at that hat. You see it?
I think it's a lane for sure.
He has a bucket hat.
Yeah.
Hey, there was an old guy. There's an old guy this weekend at Paramount. I didn't know.
Yes.
I'd never heard of him. A lot of people went.
I know who it was.
I
too.
saw
yeah,
that.
I
Yeah.
forgot.
Brad Upton is the name, I think.
Is it okay?
I'll get it because
I've never heard of him.
Yeah, it's interesting the things that can go on. I mean, that's 3 doors down from Blue Ridge.
Oh, yeah,
like that's on the same street, and I didn't know about it until like the night it happened. Somebody texted me. It was like, "Are you going to that?" And I was like, "I don't know what you're talking about." I didn't even know it was there. I mean, so
yeah, this guy.
Is that him?
That's the guy who was at the Paramount yesterday.
He was supposedly pretty funny. I saw Phil. He was going. Of course he was.
Of course he was. Yeah, of course Grampy made it out. Shout out to Grampy. Brian, so you got the sketch stuff early on, and then I'm trying to think with a lot of our guests, with Joe Bridges in particular, I think he cites his influences or his references from being a kid, and I see that in Joe. Like when he says he's a norm guy, I see that in Joe. Whereas like with you, I don't really know that I can pinpoint a particular comic that stands out with me, for and I've seen you do a lot of time. Do you ever, especially early on, was there a comic where you're like, oh shit, I'm kind of just doing that?
I mean, I kind of almost feel a little bit like, I want to say Jerry Seinfeld, but he is real. I mean, because most of my stuff is kind of like observational life experience stuff.
Yeah.
Probably somebody that's really more like that than even him, because Jerry's Jerry's always talking about the absurd, right?
Right.
He's pointing out the things that you don't consider that's just ridiculous,
Yeah.
right? But life experience, maybe Ray Romano. Ray Romano.
Okay. I could see that too. Yeah.
I liked him a lot too, and
I think a lot of people don't even know that he was a stand-up.
Oh
also,
my God, he's
he's
good.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He had a thing not too long ago too, and it was really good.
At the Cellar, was it?
Yeah.
I saw it too. Great. And Brad Garrett too. He played the brother on that show or whatever. He's another stand-up. I actually went to Brad Garrett's club when I was in Vegas.
Oh wow!
And saw a show that he wasn't on, but he has I don't know if it's an Improv or a Laugh Factory. I think it's a factory that Brad owns out there, and he's still active too, doing stand up and stuff. So that's cool. There's a lot of those names that people don't know. That's a stand up.
Everybody loves Raymond. For those who are like,
I would imagine people would know Ray Romano.
That was a great show. I
thought so too.
I just pull stuff from things that I'm experienced. That's it. That's it. 100%. And I do a lot of. I don't. They say comedians a lot of times have like this anxiety or this trauma or stuff they're pulling from, and I don't have a lot of that. I mean, the only really kind of stuff that's ever caused me any issues like relationship things. So I do a lot of, married, dating, divorce jokes and stuff. So that's kind of what I pull from a lot of times.
I feel like people relate to that in such a way though that it gets laughter. Like I know my own parents have been to shows and they're divorced, but for some reason still dating. I don't know. I don't understand. Don't ask me. But they're divorced, and I think that material like that will hit with that crowd sometimes. I mean, do you ever find that, like, I've seen you switch gears too, though. I think we talked about on the show I attended at the Model City Tap House, Hunter Roberts' show. And you were on that, and I thought that was a pretty young, like, hip brewery crowd, and I thought you crushed. Was that a fun show for you to be on?
Yeah, it was a fun show. I mean, you know, there's some things that you know are going to kind of go to that vibe.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I didn't get into a ton of the relationship stuff.
Yeah.
It helped that there was a baby in the audience, and I was able to point that out. That
it was hilarious.
It's always fun when there's children in the audience.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not even children. This is like a freaking baby, dude.
Like weeks old. Yeah. It was a baby. Yeah.
I brought.
I don't think I did it, but I do a joke about, like, you know, like an airplane and like stepping on a baby to make my way to safety.
Yeah,
and
you did it.
So I had to.
Yeah. And you have an act out where you say, "Sorry, baby." And you pointed right at that baby. And the entire crowd lost it. Because this baby had been crying through the whole show, and the mom had to get up and down a few times. Like, it was, you know, the kid was having a tough time.
Oh, that's
and
tough.
nobody had addressed it yet. So then when Bryan was like, "Sorry, baby," like, everybody lost it. And that was a great lineup too.
That's tough.
Oh, that was a good lineup. A lot of good people on that show. So funny. I
mean, you have a joke that you told. You told it last night, but I think a lot of your jokes are very clever. But one joke that I really like of yours, you're talking about fishing, right, and canoeing and
Roe
all that.
versus Wade.
Yeah,
that's my favorite joke of his too.
It's like the most clever.
It's so good.
Joke. One of the more clever jokes I've ever heard somebody make.
Tiptoe,
and I just wanted
for
to say
anybody
that.
listening who's never seen Bryan, I don't want to give it away, but you really tiptoe on the edge of, like, that political or antagonist, like, thing on stage, you know, where a lot of comics don't go there because they're scared to lose a crowd, but you do it in such a clever way that it never
Nobody
turns
can
them
get mad
against
at you.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, it's funny because I do like that joke a lot too. The only thing that I'm always a little bit hesitant about is the setup's a little longer than I'd like it to be.
Yeah.
I actually posted it not too long ago on what is it, TikTok? And I'm trying to do more social stuff. I'm an old guy.
Plug your TikTok.
It's tough.
Yeah.
They can go check it out on your TikTok.
They'll
so
find it.
it'll be in the description. Don't worry.
Yeah. So, but anyway, there's a dude that commented on it. He's like, I thought it was a bomb for a second. He's like, but at the end, he's like, oh my God, you know. And I was like, So you know, that's one thing you struggle with a little bit is, like, you want to get to the funny as quickly as you can,
right?
But I think it needs the setup.
Yeah,
sure.
It needs the context.
I think that joke is kind of unique in your act too, because while, you know, we're talking about it because it's so political, on the edge of being political and stuff, but I don't know that there's anywhere else in your act where I feel that tension, you know. So I think that's kind of that slow buildup you're talking about is almost like a cool change of pace for you. And I think you and I were talking about Jasmine Ellis had a really interesting, like, a gas pedal in her act, the headliner this weekend. She was great at, she would fly through a bit and crush with it and then slow down and speed up and slow down and speed it. She
did have some jokes with like such a long setup, but that payoff was so good.
Right.
And that's like the thing, like, the longer the setup, the bigger the payoff.
Masterclass.
Has to be.
Yeah. It's got to be a good payoff because there's nothing worse. See, that's where I learned my very first open mic. I had these these stories that I would tell with my friends, and they would just die, you know?
Right.
And I do this here. I do it in a show, and it laughs like, all right.
Right.
No,
Dude, I'm working on it quite a bit right now. My online dating joke that I told it last night, and it did how it always fucking does, and you've heard it 1,000 times.
Yeah.
That is my go-to story, like, party story to tell people, because it is the best story that I know.
Yeah.
But I can't. I've made it more.
different.
I've made it funnier now over the months that I've told it. But, like, exactly what you're saying. It's just such a reality check. Like, that crushes when I tell just my friends or strangers or whatever. But getting it to a crowd of 40 people, and it's like,
it's a different.
What is funny about this?
There's also an expectation, I think, based on, you know, if somebody went before you and crushed, like, kind of like you were saying with Cody Hughes, where it's like, you got to bring the heat now.
Yeah.
That can be tough. Bryan, here's one question I wanted to ask you today. So this is unrelated to local scene, but I saw this morning where Shane Gillis, who everybody knows, everybody's obsessed with right now, just got invited to host SNL. So he's going to be hosting on February the 24th. Now, for anybody listening, I assume anybody listening to this would understand why that's crazy.
Nate Bargatze did it first. I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
But Shane was fired from SNL.
Oh, I didn't know he was even on SNL.
Okay, good. So here's the backstory.
So, shit.
Okay, so I'll try to recap. So Shane gets cast on SNL, I think 2020, right around the pandemic.
Okay.
Maybe just gets cast on SNL. Days before the first episode is supposed to go live, it's big news. Him and Bowen Yang are the two, and Bowen is like the first East Asian descent cast member, very specific, but he's like the first Asian guy. Big deal. Shane, they dive through 10 years of his podcast with Matt McCusker, and they find a particular episode where Shane was doing an offensive Asian accent or a take on Asians. Yeah. So, of course, people get insane, get woke, get crazy. And so SNL fires Shane before they tape the first episode.
Oh, wow.
So at that point, Shane is like rock bottom. He's been in Philly for 10 years grinding, doing shows. He didn't even really want SNL, but he got it. Now he's fired. Everybody thinks that's the end of this guy. And then he just blows up because I think podcast fans, stand-up fans are like, that's enough.
It's tough to cancel someone over something 10 years ago.
Right. I think everybody's just kind of like, that's enough. We've had enough of this. And so they support him. He blows up. Now he has a Netflix special. And now he's been asked to come back and host
That's fucking
SNL.
hilarious.
Is that not... That's just crazy.
That's I'll have to watch that.
His
then.
monologue.
Yeah.
His monologue.
I didn't know the backstory, but
he has right.
He
his
better
monologue.
address
He has
that
to
in the
address
monologue.
He has to.
Yeah. Oh, certainly. I'm sure.
They better have a skit. What if they had a skit about it?
He'll crush.
It'll definitely come up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's, and there's people I think that is a little mixed bag on him for some reason. But I'll be honest with you. When Bert Kreischer came through here and did his thing.
Yep.
Shane Murray, he was the best.
The best.
He was the best on that
Not
show.
even close.
No,
I don't think it was even close. And there's murderers on that show.
I had never heard of him.
Really? Yeah.
At that time,
Right.
I'd never heard of him. I was like, this guy is awesome.
A monster.
Yeah, he was very good.
Unpopular opinion. Maybe. I don't know. I don't really care for Bert Kreischer.
I don't know. I mean, you know what?
I don't think that's an unpopular opinion.
I think the Machine, like everybody, I think the Machine is...
It got him on the map.
I think that's one of the best jokes
Sure.
I've ever heard in my life, but then I've watched other Bert Kreischer, and I'm like,
Well, I mean, he's what he's done is he's really ridden that pretty well.
Yeah.
I mean, he's
just had that movie.
He's taken that and built a career off of that story kind of blowing up.
Yeah.
Which is fine. I mean, and I don't dislike him, but there's a lot of people I'd rather hear. Before
Exactly. That's how I am with him.
He's entered that weird lane where it's almost character comedy. It's not Larry the Cable Guy, but it's all he's the Machine.
Take your shirt off and the whole thing.
He's not Bert Kreischer anymore. He's the Machine on stage. It's a different thing.
Yeah.
But one thing I love about Bert that I think not enough people give him credit for, and it's a very like Rogan mentality that he adopted, but he brings when he came to Bristol, a great example, like he brought all these names like Shane who you didn't know at the time, or some people didn't know at the time, and gives them stage time, and they crush. I mean, Brian Simpson was on that show.
Brian Simpson was great
so
too.
funny.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll clarify. I do respect him. I think he does great.
Yeah.
It's just
it's not
like
your
you
style
were
of
saying,
comedy.
It just doesn't scratch my comedic itch. I do love Tom Segura though.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Fucking love Tom Segura.
Now, so I think for Bert, I like his daughter jokes.
Right.
I like those
about
the
his
best.
family. Yeah, he's got very good family comedy. Yeah,
and I like Tom Segura pretty good too.
I will say, I
I'm
think
seeing him in April.
Funniest where are you seeing him?
Bridgestone.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
What day in April? Doesn't matter. I'll look it up. Okay. Do you need somebody to go with you? Anyway, so if you and Haley don't work out, just let me know.
That's
all
right.
right. Cool.
Yeah.
What I was gonna say about Bert Kreischer, the hardest I think I've ever laughed at a podcast was that clip from
Kool-Aid.
The Kool-Aid clip from the Two Bears One Cave. Have you seen that?
I have not.
Look up Two Bears One Cave Kool-Aid. It's like 8 or 9 minutes.
For anybody listening,
Dude,
basically they discovered that Bert's been drinking Kool-Aid in one of those big thermoses instead of water.
Right.
He looks like a guy who drinks a lot of water, but it's Kool-Aid. Yeah, so it's
it
hilarious.
It's
so funny.
If I'm having a bad day, I'll watch that clip.
Do you
how
still
funny it is.
enjoy do you still consume a lot of stand-up, or are you around it so much? That tends to be the answer.
I really don't.
Yeah.
I don't watch a lot. If somebody has a special, like for me, I mean, one of my favorites right now too is Ricky Gervais. I love him.
I just watched his new special.
And I thought
special.
I love his special.
It's great.
He's great.
Yeah.
So I mean, if there's some new specials that are really kind of compelling to me, I watch them.
Sure.
But I don't. I mean, it's
just the top, like the greatest.
Yeah. I mean, there's some stuff out there that I'm like, if I get around to it,
Yeah.
I'll watch it. I don't know why I'm just thinking about this, but I got to tell you, probably one of my favorite specials of all time. We haven't talked about this guy at all, but I'm telling you what, he's if he ever comes around here again, I got to see him as Rory Scovel.
Oh,
have you seen his special on Netflix?
One of the funniest dudes alive.
God.
He's so funny.
I'll have to check. I know who
Do you
Rory
know
Scovel.
Rory?
I know who it is.
If
I don't think I've seen that special.
If you haven't seen this special,
Rory's one of those guys where for some reason people don't know him. Even other stand-ups don't know Rory.
Well,
and I always go, why?
Yeah, and
why?
I mean, he's been to movies too. He's
been funny for 20 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
Rory did a thing. Have you ever seen? There's an appearance that Rory did on late night one time with another comedian.
Oh yeah,
and
when they're doing the jokes
at the same
together
time.
at the same time.
At the same time.
They booked 2 comedians,
Yeah.
but they only had enough time, so they both are doing their sets
At the same time.
simultaneously. And
2
it's-
mics.
2 mics.
Yeah.
And it's
For
just
the crowd.
hilarious
It's
because
so
you get.
funny.
Oh my
Well,
god!
I'll
I'll
plug
have
it.
to
I'll
check
plug
that.
it on the video. So like,
Yeah.
literally, they come out and one of them's like, "How y'all doing tonight?" And the other one's like, "What's going on, you guys?" And they're talking over each other into 2 microphones.
It's like they're both
It's
doing
ridiculous.
bits right next to each other.
They do 5
Oh.
minutes over top of each other. It's,
Oh, that's
it's one of the most
hilarious.
unique things I've
It's
ever
hilarious.
seen. It's
It
so
is
fun.
so good.
And Rory's been on the Eric Andre show too, which
Yeah.
is just a wild late night show. He's done some funny stuff on there.
Is Eric
too.
Andre still doing Impractical Jokers or no?
That
doesn't matter.
I don't know.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I do have a question for you. If you had to pick like a Mount Rushmore of comedians,
Mm-hmm.
who's your Mount Rushmore of comedians?
Are there 4?
How many
heads?
is there? 4?
4.
I think there's 4. That's what I was just.
Yeah,
I was
How
gonna
many
say-
heads are
doing the
there?
math.
I was gonna say top 3 then top 5, but neither one of those
I
felt
think
right.
there's 4.
There's 4.
4.
Yeah.
I feel like gives you enough wiggle room.
For,
Like
for me, I'm going to say Jerry.
Okay.
Jerry Seinfeld.
As like Washington level of impactful.
I don't know.
We don't have to rank them. We don't have to
Okay.
rank 'em.
Yeah, because
just
if
4.
we're ranking them, that's a problem.
That's tough. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll say Jerry.
Mm-hmm.
For me, Norm.
Okay.
Okay.
And I got to put Nate there
Yeah.
Bargatze,
for
yeah.
me because he's just
That's
he's,
George Washington,
he's-
actually.
He's
Yeah.
my guy now. Number 4.
It's tough.
That is tough,
Yeah.
man.
So you said Jerry, Norm, Nate.
It's all
I like
time
this
too,
list.
which
I
is
know
tough,
all time
you
is
know?
hard.
Yeah, it's
I
hard.
mean, I really liked Richard Pryor.
Yeah.
Maybe Richard Pryor.
I feel like you almost have to put him up.
He was.
I feel like
amazing.
anybody answering that question almost like without him, there's no.
Yeah,
doubt.
a lot of people say
You know-
George Carlin too, which I like.
Carlin, same
but
thing,
he
yeah.
was never kind of like my. I mean, I liked him.
Yeah, it's a different thing.
I like
but I
Carlin,
laughed.
he's
I
not
laughed harder at like
mine.
Richard Pryor
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
sure.
It would be kind of. I think it would be difficult to put George Carlin's face and Nate Bargatze's face on the same monument.
Yeah.
Those two don't. I don't know if they belong on your Mount Rushmore. You know, like it's not that they're not both amazing because they
Yeah,
are,
yeah, yeah.
but that's just not your brand. You know,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah, I don't know. So Jerry,
Norm
Norm,
Yeah. Nate,
Nate,
and Pryor.
and Pryor
and
maybe.
Pryor or Tyler from Elizabeth, and maybe he might.
Oh yeah, yeah, sure, yeah.
No, Richard Pryor for sure.
Sean Carter, he's
Yeah.
on there. Yeah.
Oh no, what's it, Stoney from?
Oh my god. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. I don't know if we've told that story on the show. We probably shouldn't. Let's just say there's a
do
legendary
it.
story about Blue Ridge that's which one we're talking
Oh, that video.
about. I've seen the video. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, did somebody video?
There's a
it?
video.
Yeah,
Yeah,
somebody
I'll send
video-
it to you.
yeah.
I have it now. Yeah.
It's it's not it doesn't get the very beginning of it because
No.
they didn't know the video, but
Yeah.
then they knew the video and it gets real.
I can
Oh.
understand why he's on your Mount Rushmore. That dude,
Listen,
he's a legend.
That's
He's a legend.
That's called viral on TikTok. If somebody threw that out
Yeah.
there.
That's called losing your job tomorrow.
If anybody's
level of
listening and
TikTok.
doesn't know what the hell we're talking about, you're not
Jesus.
going to because I'm not going to repeat it. But there's
we
a
talked about it on
legendary
the Joe Bridges episode.
Okay, yeah,
We
there's a
do,
legendary
'cause
incident at
he
Blue
sends-
Ridge.
He's yeah.
Listen to Joe Bridges.
I think it was
it's
his
on
episode.
there. Yeah. So I mean that's all time, and then you've mentioned now. Obviously Nate's still working. You've mentioned you really enjoy Shane, but then locally you work with a lot of our friends, a lot of past guests of this show too.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're booking a show tomorrow at Blue Ridge, is there one name where you go, he's on?
Palisac.
Who?
Michael Palisac.
Michael
okay.
Palisac.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, I would have to say Joe too, just because Joe's my guy, and
Yeah.
Joe was hilarious.
Joe Zimmerman. Yeah.
Um,
Palisac's a great one too.
Palisac is great.
Yeah.
You
And
know,
I've
there's-
opened for him, too.
There's been
He's-
so many good ones.
Yeah.
I mean,
So many.
what's the guy from Nashville? He's great too.
We've talked about him. I know who you're talking about. I can't think of his name. but
Aaron Weber.
Aaron Weber.
Yeah.
No,
Aaron
just kidding.
Weber.
Well, we have talked about him.
Yeah,
But
he was good.
Yeah.
I've seen Aaron Weber
And Blake Wexler we mentioned earlier
Blake
too.
Wexler's good.
He's a
Jenny
Philadelphia
Zagrino
comic.
killed the last time.
Hilarious.
So I'll tell you about
Yeah.
Jenny. So like the first time I saw her at Blue Ridge, I was like, meh, yeah.
Yeah.
And she's come back, I think, twice since then. And both times murdered exponentially more.
That's so
she's
cool.
very fun.
Yeah. Do you
That's
think
always
that
cool.
first time was just an off night or?
I have no idea. I'm not sure. I mean, and maybe it was just me at the time, but I was like, yeah,
Yeah.
it was fine. I mean,
Yeah.
it wasn't bad,
Yeah.
but the last time I saw her there, I was like, holy crap, she has.
I've made that mistake a lot, especially early on. I would see a comic go up one time, maybe even just an open mic, and I'd be like, that guy's not funny.
Oh,
and then
yeah.
I'd see him at a show and be like, who is this guy? Oh, that's the guy I didn't think was funny. So now, like Travis and I have said that our rule is we have to see somebody 3 times.
Oh, you got to see
before
them
we
multiple
determine.
times, for sure.
Yeah.
And I think crowds don't really take that into consideration sometimes, too. We were talking about it at the beginning of this episode. Sometimes you just have a rough night.
And yeah,
You know?
sometimes you're just off, dude.
And sometimes,
like,
and bookers do that sometimes too. If I've done a show place before that I've been off a little bit,
Yeah.
and I'm like, well, I'm never getting booked here again, probably.
Right.
You know?
Right.
But I'm like, you know, and then like, you know, the same place. I think they came out and saw me at like Blue Ridge doing like I can't remember what I was doing, and they came up to me after. It was like, hey, we gotta get you on. I was like,
That's
thanks.
awesome.
It's like, well, because I bombed last time I was there.
Yeah.
So.
That's got to feel good, though.
Adam
to, like,
Aaron, I'm
overcome
going to
that.
give Adam Aaron credit. He's done that for me. I've ate shit at
Yeah.
Alley Ray's in front of Adam Aaron. He'll still
That's a
book
tough
me.
room,
So
though. Alvarez. Have you played that room, too?
Yeah,
Alvarez?
yeah. I've done a couple shows there.
Tough room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We it just
it's getting better. Last time I was there.
Oh, it's a great room. It's just tough, yeah.
Well, I will say there was kind of a down period there for a while, it felt like. But shout out to Adam. I know we haven't shouted him out in a while, but he's gotten a lot of like bigger, like Aaron Weber was there.
Yeah.
And then if you looked at the lineup after Aaron Weber, it was just like crazy good.
Jasmine's played there too.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
okay.
she's-
I think Nick Murphy's there this weekend, too.
Yeah, I
He's
mean,
hilarious.
I think he had just like a down period where he was like building it, but like it's. I mean, he's doing 2-3 shows a night, a week now,
Do you know
rather
Nick?
than just Sunday.
Do you know Nick Murphy?
I
at all?
don't.
He, for whatever reason, he's this name that I keep hearing, like the Knoxville scene, Asheville people, when I ask who's a guy that nobody knows locally that is a murder, it's Nick Murphy, always.
Really?
I
Yeah.
haven't got to see him yet, but
I
I've heard
haven't
that
seen him
he
either.
is a monster. Yeah, I've heard that he's great. There's so many of those, too, and I think, you're talking about what talent we have locally that you don't even really need to follow, like, the big stuff. You're saying you watch a few specials here and there, but we're around so much good comedy all the time.
I
All the time.
consume in person 2-3 hours of comedy a week.
Yeah,
It feels
at
like
least,
it's tough to like. Yeah, I'm gonna see like Shane Gillis is killing it and has an awesome hour, and I do want to watch it, but it's like I'm seeing so much comedy already.
Oh,
like
God, it's so good, though.
I do want to ask you this. You may have touched on it already, but what would you say is like the best show that you finished the show and you were just like, yeah, this was like the best show I've ever done. What would you say that show was?
Man, that's tough. I mean, I've had a handful that just went really well.
Yeah.
And I was like, very jazzed after.
Yeah.
There was a sold out show at Blue Ridge. The first time I got the headline there, and it went really, really, really well. So I love that. Cary Theater, I did the Cary Theater, and that show was killer. I didn't know what to think about it because it was like the first kind of theater show I'd done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
How many theater shows have you done?
A lot.
4 or 5
More
probably
than
theaters.
us, yeah.
But so those theaters, right? But then I've done shows like I did the Brouhaha at Meadowview, which is bigger than the theater shows.
I saw that,
Yeah, and that's how I kind of got hooked up with Jasmine a little tighter. She was on that show.
Gotcha.
But that theater show in particular, because it was like people were coming in with their walker with tennis balls, and I was like, okay, this is going to be one of those.
Yeah.
Apparently that's my demographic. So. It was a clean show, the whole thing, but it went really well.
That's awesome.
What
size crowd is that?
That was probably 200 people, maybe.
Yeah.
But
400 people, the most you performed in front of, would you say?
well, there was 800 at Brouhaha, I think.
Oh, I thought Brouhaha had 400. My bad.
No,
Jeez, 8. So
Yeah.
many.
yeah,
That's
probably the biggest.
That's at least 7 or 8 times the crowd that Michael or I have ever.
It was.
Yeah, I think the biggest I've ever done was the sold out Blue Ridge.
Right. It's about
Yeah.
110.
What was
110.
interesting about it is it's big enough to where like you're in that room, and they also have the big screens on each side of the stage too.
With you.
Oh
on them.
yeah.
So-
I've seen a band that it was. Well, I didn't see. Never mind. That's a dumb fucking story. Go ahead.
But those are weird though because I will tell you this: it's a little harder to gauge those. So
Yeah.
the reason I didn't say, I had people come up to me after that show, like, man, that was great, and it felt pretty good.
That's if you're in the room I'm thinking you are, that's a
But
huge.
it's such a huge room, you don't feel
Yeah.
like you do in a club. You know what
I've
I mean?
heard
Do you know what room he's talking about? It's like a
Well, I saw the
quarter mile.
pictures. Yeah.
Dude, like I swear to you, it is like a quarter mile like wide.
Which
yeah.
is
It
not
is
what you
huge.
want for stand. Just
Yeah.
in general, that's not.
I mean, even though everybody was there. I mean, it was packed, but it's so big and just that you're tall. You don't feel the energy you do in a club. I would much rather than something like that.
Yeah.
I would much rather do a club.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Have you done the Wallace, I assume?
oh
in
yeah,
Johnson City?
yeah. Hey, Wallace is a hot room.
It's
Actually,
a perfect room.
Actually, one of my best shows probably was there too. So I did.
I believe
I did a taping there, and that show went really well. So
Yeah.
Travis actually came out. Him and John Murphy, they had their stuff, and they were taping it
That's
for
awesome.
me. That was a good show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That room, just, and I say this all the time on the show, but architecturally, that's my dream room. I mean,
Yeah.
that seats 100, but it is built for comedy. It's perfect.
It's a hot,
It's
and there's
perfect.
always a hot crowd there.
Always.
It's I've never been there and it be a bad crowd.
Hey, book me for the Wallace. Still haven't done it, please. So
They're not going to do it.
Yep.
Real quick, I want to plug this on the show. I'll probably clip it out for the video and post it for promos. I think I've told each of you individually, but I'm announcing officially on the show. As of yesterday, I am officially bringing Don't Tell to the Tri-Cities.
I don't think you're supposed
yeah.
to tell, bro.
Oh, that was wrong.
Well,
I'm so sorry.
It
that
is
was,
called Don't Tell.
I mean, I don't think you're supposed to. That's supposed to be on the down low, bro.
I think, well, it's tough. I'm supposed to.
Yeah.
Well, no. I don't want that. I don't.
No,
cut
dude,
that
I'm
shit off.
excited.
I don't want that.
Okay,
I'm not
fine,
saying it
I'll
for
bring
that.
it back.
I'm saying that
No,
because
that's so cool, though.
It is Don't Tell. It is a secret show. It's a pop-up show. If you don't know what it is, check it out. Don't Tell Comedy. You can find it. I'm sure we'll plug it.
And I'm headlining the first show.
Incorrect. But not even close. But no, it's very exciting. It's an interesting gimmick. You know, it's a pop-up. It's a quiet kind of underground comedy thing. But we also have to market it. We have to get the word out.
Yeah.
And so I think it's going to do really well locally. But officially, I've been in limbo for months. I've kind of teased it on the show before. I've never said directly what it is. That's the news. That's the big exciting news. So it is coming. I think probably March or April will be the first show.
That's
day.
awesome, man.
So
Those
just
are
any time now.
Those are
Yeah.
fun
Congratulations.
shows, man.
It's going to be so much fun. They're in unconventional locations, pop-up style. A lot of times it's BYOB, and I've got about 20 places locally that are on my radar. So it's going to be awesome.
Two things. First of all, Kayla and I were talking about this the other day. She's like, whatever came of that? And I'm like, I don't know. I haven't heard about it.
Well, I
in a
didn't
while.
hear anything. I was in limbo for a while. Yeah.
The other thing, I thought of a good location for you, and I think this will be...
Well, don't say it. Don't say it.
No. I think this will be the
Don't
hottest
tell.
show.
Don't tell.
Bimberg Factory.
Too late. You already said.
Do you know what that is?
Is that the one in Elizabeth?
That's the one in Elizabeth.
The what?
I don't think we can do that legally. It's an abandoned factory.
It's
Legally,
an abandoned
that's a
factory
problem.
that got shut down because there's asbestos in the walls.
Yeah, legally that's a problem.
Yeah,
but
never mind.
no. So it's I don't want to give too much away.
Yeah.
Obviously, like you said, Brian, it's Don't Tell. It's a secret show, but I am telling. It's coming. It's coming
That's
here.
so
And there's
cool,
there's
dude.
Don't Tell Knoxville. There's Don't Tell Asheville, Chattanooga, and then we have this weird gray area in the middle. So I kind of been in limbo with the company for a while, but we got it sorted out. So it's coming soon, and I'm sure we'll talk about it, more in the future. But hopefully by the time this comes out, tickets will probably be on sale for the first show.
Sweet.
So
Congratulations,
grab
man.
those.
That's so
Thank
cool.
you. Thank you. It's very
Yeah.
exciting.
I'm looking forward to that. I mean, it's
Yeah.
this scene here is just growing like crazy, and that'll be
It
just
is.
one more thing to.
That's really kind of the
I think
motivation.
a couple comedians that we know and we've had on the show will make it, like
Oh, for sure.
be nationally known.
Well, I think
in the next
they'll
couple
make
of years.
it locally as well. Like as far as when I had the meeting with this Don't Tell person, he's like, explain to me what's going on locally because he's in LA. He has no idea, and I'm like,
Sure.
none of this really means anything to you because you don't know these people. But I can promise you that I have comedians to pull from. Not only Bristol, not only Johnson City, but Asheville, Knoxville,
Yeah.
Nashville. I mean, I think. Without giving away too much, I think Amber Autry's going to be involved in kind of the early stages as well. She's the Don't Tell rep for Nashville. Justin is in Knoxville. So we're kind of putting together this route, this Don't Tell
Sure.
route through the area. And I think it's going to be massive. I mean, Justin, we talked about it on the show. Justin just had Sam Talent headline Don't Tell Knoxville. So obviously that's down the road. But early on, I think I have a very rising tide lifts all ships mentality with it. I
100%.
just
Yeah.
want to try to give everybody opportunity.
sharpens iron,
and
my man.
obviously myself too. I think it's a little self-motivated.
So do you
but-
host those shows or do you get a host? How does that work?
It's up to you. So
Yeah.
there's kind of like an incentive involved if I decide to host, or I'm allowed to pick a host as well. There's
so
a
you'll
lot
host
of
probably.
Yeah, we could talk more details.
Yeah, no, I
after.
was just curious. I didn't know how that worked for.
Well, there's a lot that goes
Yeah,
into it, and
yeah.
I'm still learning. So, but yeah, if you're listening to this now, Don't Tell Comedy. Check out. We'll have an Instagram running probably by the time this comes out. So Don't Tell Tri-Cities. is the
Nathaniel's
name.
gonna have like 3-4 Instagrams to run.
Yeah, no shit.
Shoot.
But I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna take care of it.
Yeah.
And we're gonna make it really good. Hopefully, we'll get good crowds. And of course, both of you, Brian especially, will be on there. Michael, we'll see. Maybe if you would have pressed record, I would have messed
Boom.
you.
Yeah, you know what? I deserve that. Jeez.
No, it's going to be not only out of towners who are incredible and bring good talent, but the locals are going to get lifted up as well.
Yeah.
So it's going to be
That's
great.
so cool, dude.
Yeah.
I'm so excited to headline. Thank you for asking me that.
It's going to be great. Before we wrap up, Brian, the closer we always ask is, what is one piece of advice that you would give to a young comic who's just starting out? Maybe their first open mic, maybe they've been doing it a while, but they're like, just one gem, doesn't have to be super specific. What's something you could share from your own experience in comedy?
I would say probably just keep doing it, because it's a miracle if it goes great the first time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, and even if it's a new joke, I've written jokes that I thought this is going to murder, and it sucked at an open mic.
Right.
You know, and I've written things that are like, it's okay, and it does well. Just keep trying things, and you know, it's. I think there's this impression that people have that it's got to be good all the time. It's never good all the time.
Mm-mm.
And if you want to do it and you're interested in it, you got to keep doing it.
Yeah.
And the other thing is too is that the more you do it, the more comfortable you get.
Mm-hmm.
So I could do the same joke now, and I could do a new joke and do it in a way that's okay, right? I could do it 10 times, and then by the 11th time, it's so much better because you just got a comfort level with it.
Yeah.
So just keep at it.
You know where the punches are in the
Yeah.
joke. Yeah. I get
Well,
it.
and
you tighten it up, really.
Would you say it was difficult for you to find your voice or your comfort on stage? I mean, that tends to be the hardest thing for young comics to overcome.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm in the real world, I'm a sales guy. I'm in front of people all the time.
Yeah.
And so that was never the biggest problem for me but I will say this, comedy is a lot like that, in that the more prepared you are before you come on stage, the better it's going to go.
Sure.
You know, I mean, if you just come up there and you're just winging it, unless you're just a comedy genius, you got to have a plan, you know?
Yeah.
And so I think preparation, you know, is probably a big thing. But, I mean, it took me a while. I mean, I had to figure out stuff that I thought was going to work, you know, that it was going to be good. And, you know, the funniest things are things that happen to us, you know. In our life, we take it, and I sit there, it's like I'll wake up in the middle of the night or something, or I'll be laying there in bed. I was like, oh, this could be a funny idea. I got a whole list of
me too.
Make jokes out of this. You know, just that idea that then you sit down and spend time writing about it and see if you can make it funny.
You think that vulnerability too, like sharing your life experiences, for me, that's what gets me. When a comic is not putting any walls between them and the audience. I mean, I think a lot of times I've seen headliners where I almost feel like there's a big glass wall between the crowd and them. And they're kind of hiding through it, you know, or they feel safe up there. But then I've seen other comics where it's like, I'm just in the trenches of this guy's life with him. And that reads, I think the audience detects that.
100%. I mean, the vulnerability part, I used to do so listen, I'm not a small guy, but I used to be a big guy. And I had my, you know, I'm a fat ass jokes all over the place.
Right.
And then it was like, okay, I mean, I'm not a small guy now, but I can't really do fat jokes as much as I used to. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, those were things for me. I was very self-conscious about it. I was like, I'm just going to poke fun at it. Yeah. You know? So anything like that in my life, it's just like, you know, that's to make fun of the things that, you know, so.
Yeah. No, that's great advice. I think a lot of our guests have mentioned, like, just keep doing it. You know, Dustin Aaron, the first time he was on, he said keep walking was like a metaphor for him, which is great advice. But I think the vulnerability thing you're mentioning is kind of unique for this show too. But it's something that I don't know if a crowd knows they're detecting it. But when you see a crowd not enjoying a comic, sometimes I think that's it. And the crowd doesn't even know why. Right. The crowd's not sure, but they smell something off. You know, they don't feel right.
Or they don't feel genuine for whatever reason.
And nerves, too. When you're a young comic, those nerves are tough.
Yeah. Just work through the nerves. Use the nerves.
Yeah.
You know? That was awesome advice. So before we wrap up, you have a lot to plug, I'm sure. Do you have any shows, any social medias, anything like that you wanna shout out?
Yeah, so I'm starting to, everybody's telling me, got to do more social, right? So TikTok, Bryan Morton Comedy, Instagram, Bryan Morton Comedy. Yep. I'm on Facebook. Got some shows coming up. They're not really around here, though. Got one in Williamsburg coming up.
That's awesome.
Got another one in
love Williamsburg.
Where's my other one? Oh, I'm doing the Cary Theater again, the one I said.
Oh, that's
nice.
great.
So I booked it again. But yeah, and I do take that back. Well, I don't know that I can even plug it. I'm doing a show on the 18th at Blue Ridge. It's a Sunday, but it's kind of a women's adventure group.
Oh,
Oh, that's super
gonna be
cool.
now I got to figure out how I'm going to do jokes for an entirely female audience.
that's
Yeah.
tough.
This comes out, I think 2-3 days. This comes out the Friday before that. So
Yeah, perfect timing.
Oh,
Yeah,
nice. So
perfect
that'll be the
Yeah.
18th.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that goes.
That makes me shit myself just thinking about it. Just for the record, like
Yeah.
a crowd of all
Nathaniel's
women makes
scared
me
of
want to
women.
die.
Nathaniel's scared of women.
Yeah,
I feel like I'd be fine, but
yeah.
I don't know.
You are
Yeah.
the cute and cuddly host.
I know. I'm like bros like me. Like when I do the Wallace and some of the ETSU frats are at the front table, I'm like, oh, good, bros are here.
Yeah.
You know, like bros
Yeah.
will like this stuff. Yeah, women, I don't know.
Yeah, we'll see how the women thing goes.
We'll see.
We'll
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you're listening to this in like 2 days, you can go watch Bryan perform in front of all women, and we'll see how it goes. Yeah, and we'd love to have you back also at some point,
sure.
and you can talk about how that went and all
Yeah,
these
for
massive
sure.
fucking theaters you're doing.
Well,
Something else.
couple things for the podcast. You know, you can follow me everywhere, Michael Rose Comedy, and the podcast is Talkin Bits Pod on Instagram. And Nathaniel.
No shows coming up. You got nothing?
No, I will be booked hopefully by the end of the month. I have to send out some emails, but
Yeah.
I took a little bit of a hiatus
Mhm.
after the comedy festival, and I'm just kind of that was the show that you asked me to be on last night. It was the first time I got booked on anything.
Yeah.
That's why I went long because I wasn't
Okay.
prepared. But
Excuses.
yeah. So yeah, you
Yeah.
guys, you just follow me on the gram. You'll see what I'm doing.
Yep.
So
And then I have I'll plug my stuff like my Instagram is still the same, and Michael won't ever get me to change it. It's NLB underscore.
Travis was the one trying to get you
It's
to change
NLB
it.
underscore 423. There's a link tree now also in my Instagram bio that's going to have a link to the Don't Tell site as soon as I
And
get that
his
going.
OnlyFans.
And my OnlyFans. So go check out my feet pics there. Support me financially. My Venmo's there as well. Shout out to Venmo. So give me money. But no, so there'll be a link to Don't Tell. There will be a lot of details, obviously, on this show coming soon about that. But give me a follow. I've got a show in North Carolina in March for LA Preston. I'm doing with Meredith and Dustin. That's going to be real fun. So if you're listening to this and you're in Asheville or over in that direction, I'll post that date as well. So
Yeah, one last thing and I forget about this all the time. I have a website,
Oh,
shit.
yeah.
BryanMortonComedy.com.
Bryan Morton.
Bryan Morton
Comedy.
Comedy.
Yeah, so you can
All in the
you can see
description.
stuff there.
They're going to go. They're
Yeah.
going to follow it. Yep.
So awesome. Well, guys, thank you for checking out the podcast this week. We thank you, Bryan, for being on it.
Absolutely.
It's fun.
We love you all. Check out our socials. Check out Bryan's website, and we will catch you all next week.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye.